Hey everyone, today we dive into one of the most bizarre and classified chapters of the Cold War, the incredible story of Project Stargate, where the United States government spent over 20 years and millions of dollars trying to weaponize psychic abilities for espionage. What I'm about to tell you sounds like science fiction, but every word is documented fact from declassified CIA and military files. The story you're about to hear involves government psychics who claimed they could spy on Soviet installations using only their minds, predicted astronomical discoveries years before NASA confirmed them, and engaged in what can only be described as psychic warfare with their Russian counterparts. So before we dive in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now get comfortable, grab something to drink, and let's experience this incredible story together. Picture this, it's 1972, deep in the heart of the Cold War. The Soviet Union and the United States are locked in a deadly game of espionage, each side desperately trying to gain any advantage over the other. The nuclear standoff has created a world where information is more valuable than gold, and the slightest intelligence advantage could mean the difference between peace and annihilation. In a nondescript building at Stanford Research Institute in California, a physicist named Harold Puthoff is about to begin an experiment that will change everything. He's been tasked with something that would make most scientists laugh, testing whether human beings can actually see through walls, across continents, and into the deepest secrets of enemy nations, using nothing but their minds. Puthoff isn't your typical government contractor. He's a respected laser physicist who has worked on classified projects for the National Security Agency. His background in quantum mechanics and electromagnetic theory makes him uniquely qualified to approach seemingly impossible phenomena with scientific rigor. But even he has doubts about what he's been asked to investigate. The initial funding comes from a mysterious source within the CIA, channeled through the Defense Intelligence Agency to maintain plausible deniability. The project has no official name yet, just a cryptic designation that will eventually become one of the most controversial programs in intelligence history. The man sitting across from Puthoff doesn't look like someone who would revolutionize intelligence gathering. Russell Targ, a laser physicist who has worked on the development of laser technology for military applications, seems equally skeptical about the whole thing. They've been brought together by the CIA to investigate claims that have been filtering in from intelligence sources around the world. The Soviets, their sources claim, are pouring massive resources into psychic research. If the rumors are true, the Russians might already be reading American minds and spying on classified facilities using paranormal abilities. The genesis of this investigation traces back to a series of disturbing intelligence reports that began surfacing in the late 1960s. American operatives in Moscow reported that Soviet scientists were conducting extensive research into what they called psychotronics, the supposed ability to influence physical systems through mental concentration. These reports weren't coming from unreliable sources or conspiracy theorists, but from seasoned intelligence professionals who had observed Soviet research facilities firsthand. The reports described experiments where Russian psychics claimed they could interfere with electronic equipment, influence the behavior of laboratory animals, and even affect the health of human subjects from a distance. What makes these reports particularly alarming is that they coincide with a period of intense interest in paranormal phenomena within the Soviet scientific establishment. Unlike in the United States, where psychic research is generally dismissed as pseudoscience, Soviet researchers are approaching these phenomena with the same seriousness they would apply to nuclear physics or space exploration. The reports suggest that the Soviet Union views psychic abilities as a potential weapon of war, something that could give them a decisive advantage in the ongoing Cold War confrontation. The American response to these reports reveals the paranoid atmosphere of the era. If the Soviets are developing psychic weapons, the reasoning goes, then the United States must develop countermeasures or risk being left defenseless against an invisible threat. The irony isn't lost on anyone involved that the world's most technologically advanced military is seriously considering the possibility that the outcome of the Cold War might depend on whose psychics are more powerful. What happens next defies everything we think we know about the limits of human perception. Puthoff and Targ begin working with a former police commissioner named Pat Price, who claims he can mentally visit any location on Earth and describe what he sees there. Price isn't a typical psychic performer. He's a former law enforcement official with a reputation for integrity and attention to detail. His background in police work has given him skills in observation and description that make him an ideal test subject for what the researchers are trying to accomplish. The first experiments are deliberately simple. He decides to test whether Price can accurately describe locations in the local area without having any prior knowledge of where the research team is going. The protocol they develop will become the foundation for thousands of future experiments. A member of the research team drives to a randomly selected location in the San Francisco Bay Area. They remain there for 30 minutes, during which time Price, sitting in the laboratory, attempts to describe what he perceives about the target location. The results of these early experiments are so striking that they immediately attract the attention of CIA officials. Price's descriptions aren't vague or generalized. He provides specific details about architectural features, describes the colors of buildings, mentions the presence of people and vehicles, even comments on the weather conditions at the target location. When the descriptions are compared to photographs taken at the target sites, the accuracy rate is far higher than chance would predict. More importantly, Price's descriptions include details that wouldn't be apparent to a casual observer, suggesting that he's somehow accessing information that goes beyond normal sensory perception. But here's where things get really interesting. The CIA isn't just interested in local targets. They give Price something that should be impossible: the coordinates of a secret Soviet installation deep inside Russia. This is the moment when the experiment transforms from academic curiosity to serious intelligence operation. Price has never been to Russia, doesn't speak Russian, and has no way of knowing what exists at these coordinates. The coordinates themselves are derived from satellite intelligence and refer to a facility that the CIA suspects is involved in weapons development, but about which they have very little detailed information. Price sits quietly in the Stanford laboratory, thousands of miles from the target location. He enters what he describes as his viewing state, a relaxed, meditative condition where he allows impressions to flow freely through his consciousness. He begins describing what he sees in his mind's eye, speaking slowly and deliberately as the researchers record every word. He talks about a massive underground facility, describes the layout of buildings that aren't visible from the surface, mentions specific types of equipment that suggest advanced manufacturing capabilities, and even draws detailed sketches of what appears to be a new type of submarine under construction. The level of detail in Price's descriptions is extraordinary. He describes the facility as being built into a natural hillside, with most of the construction occurring underground to avoid detection by American surveillance satellites. He mentions specific architectural features, describes the types of vehicles he sees in the area, and even provides information about the security arrangements around the facility. Most remarkably, he describes what appears to be a submarine construction project taking place hundreds of miles from the nearest body of water, something that would seem impossible unless the submarine was being built for eventual transport to a distant port. Months later, when satellite intelligence and human intelligence sources provide confirmation, Price's descriptions prove accurate down to details that wouldn't be visible from above. The facility is indeed a submarine construction plant, and the new vessel being built there represents a significant advancement in Soviet naval capabilities. The CIA realizes they might have stumbled onto something extraordinary, a new form of intelligence gathering that could provide access to information that no conventional method could obtain. This success leads to the formal establishment of what becomes known as Project Stargate, though the program operates under various code names throughout its existence. The initial funding is modest, but the potential implications are enormous. If human consciousness can somehow transcend normal spatial and temporal limitations, it could revolutionize not just intelligence gathering, but our entire understanding of reality itself. The program begins attracting some of the most unlikely government employees you could imagine. There's Joe McMonigal, a decorated Army warrant officer who discovered his abilities after a near-death experience that occurred during a routine military operation. McMonigal's story is particularly compelling because his psychic abilities emerged following a traumatic event that nearly killed him. During a training exercise, he suffered a severe heart attack and was clinically dead for several minutes before being revived by medical personnel. When he recovered, he found that he could somehow perceive things that weren't physically present, ability that both terrified and fascinated him. McMonigal's military background makes him an ideal candidate for the program. He understands the importance of operational security, can follow complex protocols, and has the discipline necessary to work with classified intelligence targets. More importantly, his near-death experience has given him a unique perspective on consciousness and reality that allows him to approach psychic phenomena without the skepticism that might limit other subjects. His descriptions of the remote viewing process are particularly valuable because he can articulate the experience in language that military and intelligence officials can understand. The military initially wanted to discharge McMonigle because of his unusual abilities, viewing them as a potential security risk rather than an asset. The logic was that someone who claimed to have psychic abilities might be mentally unstable and therefore unsuitable for continued military service. However, when word of his abilities reached the developing Stargate program, he became one of their most valuable recruits. His combination of military training, psychic abilities, and personal stability made him an ideal remote viewer. Then there's Ingo Swann, an artist from New York who claims he can mentally travel anywhere in the solar system. Swann's background is completely different from the military officers and police officials who dominate the early program. He's an artist and writer who has been interested in psychic phenomena for most of his adult life. What makes him valuable to the program isn't just his claimed abilities, but his articulate way of describing the remote viewing process and his willingness to submit to rigorous scientific testing. Swann's demonstrations are so convincing that he becomes the program's star performer, the subject who is most often presented to skeptical officials and visiting dignitaries. His ability to describe distant locations with remarkable accuracy, combined with his engaging personality and artistic sensibilities, makes him an effective advocate for the program. He can explain complex concepts about consciousness and perception in ways that make sense to people who have no background in psychology or physics. In one famous session that becomes legendary within the program, Swann is asked to describe what he sees when he mentally visits Jupiter. This is 1973, years before the Voyager missions will reach the gas giant and provide detailed information about its structure and composition. At the time, Jupiter is known to have several moons, but most astronomers believe that the planet itself is a relatively simple gas giant without rings or other complex features. Swann's assignment is to focus on Jupiter and describe whatever impressions he receives about the planet's characteristics. Swann enters his viewing state and begins describing Jupiter in remarkable detail. He talks about the planet's atmospheric composition, describes the complex storm systems that create its distinctive appearance, and mentions several features that won't be confirmed until space probes reach the planet years later. But the most dramatic moment comes when he describes Jupiter as having rings, a detail that astronomers at the time insist is impossible. Only Saturn has rings, they argue, and Jupiter definitely doesn't have any such features. The scientific establishment's reaction to Swann's claim is predictably skeptical. Astronomers point out that if Jupiter had rings, they would have been detected by Earth-based telescopes long ago. The absence of any observational evidence for Jovian rings is taken as proof that Swann's remote viewing session was inaccurate. However, 6 years later, when Voyager 1 conducts its flyby of Jupiter, the spacecraft's cameras reveal exactly what Swann described, a faint ring system that is invisible from Earth, but clearly present around the planet. This success establishes Swann's reputation within the program and provides dramatic evidence that remote viewing might be capable of providing information that conventional methods cannot obtain. The fact that Swann accurately described Jupiter's rings years before their scientific discovery suggests that the remote viewing process can somehow access information that exists independently of current human knowledge. This has profound implications for both the practical applications of the program and our theoretical understanding of consciousness. As the program grows throughout the 1970s and 1980s, the viewers begin working on increasingly sensitive intelligence targets. They're asked to locate missing prisoners of war in Vietnam, to spy on Soviet military installations, and to track the movements of foreign leaders. The variety of targets reflects the intelligence community's growing confidence in the program's capabilities and their willingness to use remote viewing for operational purposes, rather than just experimental research. The Vietnam War provides some of the program's most emotionally charged assignments. American prisoners of war are being held in camps throughout North Vietnam and Cambodia, but conventional intelligence methods have been unable to locate many of these facilities. The remote viewers are asked to help find missing POWs, a mission that carries enormous personal significance for everyone involved. The viewers understand that their work might literally be a matter of life and death for captured American servicemen. The results of these POW-related sessions are mixed, but sometimes remarkable. Several viewers provide detailed descriptions of prison camps that are later confirmed by other intelligence sources. They describe the physical conditions in the camps, provide information about the treatment of prisoners, and sometimes even identify specific individuals who are being held captive. In at least one case, A remote viewing session leads directly to the rescue of American prisoners who might otherwise have remained captive indefinitely. The success of these missions leads to expanded use of remote viewing for tactical military purposes. The viewers are asked to provide intelligence about enemy troop movements, to locate hidden weapons caches, and to predict the outcomes of military operations. The program develops a reputation within the intelligence community for providing unique insights that complement conventional intelligence gathering methods. But what exactly are these people doing? How does remote viewing actually work? The scientists running the program spend years developing protocols and theoretical frameworks to explain the phenomena they're observing. The process that emerges from this research is both simple and mysterious. A viewer is given minimal information about a target, usually just a set of coordinates or a sealed envelope containing basic target information. They're told nothing about what they're supposed to be looking for, where the target might be located, or what kind of information is desired. The viewer then enters a relaxed, meditative state that researchers term the viewing state. This isn't sleep or unconsciousness, but rather a condition of focused attention where normal analytical thinking is suspended. In this state, the viewer begins describing whatever impressions come to mind. These impressions might be visual, auditory, tactile, or even emotional. The viewer might sketch what they see, describe sounds or smells associated with the target, or report on the general atmosphere or mood of the location. The sessions are carefully monitored and recorded by trained researchers who ensure that the protocols are followed correctly. The viewer's impressions are documented in detail, with particular attention paid to specific verifiable details that can be checked against known intelligence about the target. The researchers are careful to avoid leading questions or providing any feedback that might influence the viewer's perceptions. After the session is complete, the viewer's impressions are compared against known intelligence about the target. This analysis is conducted by researchers who have access to classified information about the target, but who weren't present during the remote viewing session. The accuracy rates are tracked meticulously, with particular attention paid to specific details that wouldn't be available from open sources or general knowledge. Over thousands of sessions conducted throughout the program's history, the success rate averages around 30% for detailed, actionable intelligence. While this might not sound impressive to casual observers, it's far above what random chance would predict, and in the world of intelligence gathering, even a 30% success rate from an untraceable source is incredibly valuable. The program's supporters argue that conventional intelligence methods rarely achieve much higher success rates, and that remote viewing provides access to information that simply cannot be obtained through any other means. The statistical analysis of the program's results becomes increasingly sophisticated as the research progresses. The researchers develop complex methodologies for measuring accuracy, accounting for the possibility of fraud or unconscious cueing, and distinguishing between specific, verifiable details and general impressions that might be true of many different targets. The statistical evidence that emerges from this analysis is compelling, though it remains controversial within the broader scientific community. One of the most dramatic successes comes in 1979, when the program is tasked with investigating a mysterious construction project in the Soviet Union. American satellites have detected unusual activity at a site in Siberia, but the purpose of the construction isn't clear from the overhead imagery. The site appears to be a major industrial facility, but its specific function remains unknown. The analysts suspect it might be a new type of nuclear facility, or perhaps a chemical weapons plant, but they need more detailed information to assess the potential threat. The intelligence community's interest in this facility reflects the broader context of the Cold War in the late 1970s. The Soviet Union is engaged in a massive military buildup, and American intelligence agencies are struggling to keep track of all the new weapons systems and facilities being developed. Traditional intelligence methods have their limitations, particularly when dealing with underground facilities or installations that are deliberately designed to avoid detection by satellite surveillance. The Stargate program represents a potential solution to these intelligence challenges. If remote viewing can provide detailed information about hidden facilities, it could give American intelligence agencies a significant advantage in monitoring Soviet military developments. The Siberian facility becomes a test case for the program's operational capabilities. Pat Price, now one of the program's most experienced and reliable viewers, is assigned to investigate the mysterious Siberian installation. The target coordinates are derived from satellite intelligence and refer to a remote location that Price has never visited and knows nothing about. The briefing he receives is minimal. consisting only of the coordinates and a request to describe whatever he perceives about the target location. Price sits in the familiar environment of the Stanford Laboratory, surrounded by the recording equipment and monitoring devices that have become routine parts of the remote viewing process. He enters his viewing state, a condition of relaxed attention that he has refined through years of practice. The impressions that emerge from this session are remarkably detailed and specific, providing information that wouldn't be available from satellite imagery or other conventional intelligence sources. Price describes a massive underground complex that extends far beneath the surface installation visible in satellite photos. He mentions specific architectural features, describes the types of equipment being used in the facility, and provides detailed information about the security arrangements surrounding the installation. Most significantly, he describes what appears to be a submarine construction project taking place hundreds of miles from the nearest body of water, a detail that seems impossible unless the submarine is being built for eventual transport to a distant port. His descriptions include technical details about the submarine's design that suggest it represents a significant advancement in Soviet naval capabilities. He describes hull configurations that don't match any known Soviet submarine classes, mentions propulsion systems that appear to be more advanced than anything in the current Soviet fleet, and provides information about weapons systems that suggest this vessel is designed for strategic rather than tactical missions. The level of detail in Price's descriptions is extraordinary, but what makes them particularly valuable is their specificity. He doesn't just describe a generic submarine, he provides detailed information about dimensions, capabilities, and design features that can be analyzed by naval intelligence specialists. He describes the facility's layout in enough detail that analysts can understand the manufacturing processes being used and estimate the timeline for the project's completion. The intelligence proves remarkably accurate when, months later, the completed submarine is transported overland to the nearest port, exactly as Price had described. The vessel represents a new class of Soviet submarine with capabilities that pose a significant threat to American naval forces. The remote viewing session provided crucial early warning about this new weapon system, allowing American military planners to develop countermeasures before the submarine became operational. This success establishes remote viewing as a legitimate intelligence tool within the broader intelligence community. The program's funding increases significantly, and its scope expands to include a much wider range of targets and applications. Success stories like the Siberian submarine facility demonstrate that remote viewing can provide strategic intelligence that simply cannot be obtained through conventional means. But the story takes an even stranger turn when the viewers begin reporting something unexpected and deeply disturbing. During sessions targeting Soviet facilities, they start describing what appears to be a mirror image of their own program. The Russian remote viewers they report are also conducting psychic espionage operations against American targets. Some of the American viewers claim they can sense when they're being psychically observed by Soviet remote viewers, creating a bizarre form of paranormal surveillance and counter-surveillance. The implications of this development are staggering. If both superpowers are engaged in psychic espionage, it means that the Cold War has expanded into dimensions that were previously the stuff of science fiction. The possibility that Soviet psychics might be spying on American military installations and reading the minds of American officials, or even influencing American decision-making processes, represents a threat unlike anything in previous military history. The American viewers' reports of Soviet psychic activity are detailed and consistent. They describe sensing the presence of foreign observers during their own remote viewing sessions, experiencing interference that seems to come from hostile psychic sources, and receiving impressions that appear to be deliberate attempts at deception or misdirection. Some viewers report that they can identify specific Soviet remote viewers by their psychic signatures, suggesting that the Russian program includes individuals with distinctive psychic characteristics. This leads to some of the most bizarre episodes in the program's history. American viewers report that they're being psychically attacked by their Soviet counterparts, experiencing symptoms that range from simple disorientation to more serious psychological and physical effects. They describe feeling watched or monitored even when they're not engaged in remote viewing sessions, suggesting that the Soviet program might be conducting ongoing surveillance of American remote viewers. The attacks, as they come to be known within the program, take various forms. Some viewers report experiencing intense headaches during sessions targeting Soviet facilities, headaches that seem to correlate with their attempts to gather intelligence about specific installations. Others describe feeling emotionally drained or psychologically destabilized after working on Russian targets, as if their mental energy is being deliberately disrupted by hostile forces. The program begins developing what they euphemistically call psychic countermeasures, techniques designed to protect viewers from hostile psychic intrusion. These countermeasures represent some of the most unusual research ever conducted under government auspices. The techniques include everything from meditation and visualization exercises designed to create psychic shields, to electromagnetic shielding devices that might protect viewers from psychic attacks, to complex protocols for detecting and neutralizing hostile psychic influence. The development of these countermeasures reveals the program's growing sophistication and the seriousness with which officials treat the threat of psychic warfare. The researchers experiment with various forms of psychological and technological protection, trying to create a comprehensive defense system against paranormal threats. The fact that substantial resources are devoted to this research indicates that the psychic attacks are taken seriously at the highest levels of the intelligence community. The human cost of this psychic warfare becomes increasingly apparent as the program progresses. Several viewers begin experiencing serious psychological problems that appear to be related to their remote viewing activities. The constant exposure to foreign intelligence targets, combined with the stress of potential psychic attacks, takes a significant toll on the participants' mental health and psychological stability. Some viewers develop what can only be described as paranoid delusions, becoming convinced that they're being followed, monitored, or attacked by foreign psychics, even when they're not actively engaged in remote viewing. These delusions are particularly troubling because they might actually be accurate perceptions rather than psychological symptoms. The possibility that Soviet remote viewers are conducting ongoing surveillance of American personnel creates a situation where paranoia might be an appropriate response to real threats. Others experience what they describe as psychic burnout, a condition where they gradually lose their remote viewing abilities and become unable to function effectively as intelligence assets. The burnout appears to be related to the psychological stress of the work, but it might also result from sustained psychic attacks designed to neutralize American remote viewing capabilities. Joe McMonigle, one of the program's most successful and reliable viewers, later describes the experience as profoundly isolating and psychologically demanding. He spends years accessing the minds and hidden facilities of America's enemies, but he can't talk about his work with anyone outside the program. His family doesn't know what he does for a living, and he can't share the incredible things he's witnessing with anyone who might understand the implications. The isolation is compounded by the nature of the work itself. Remote viewing requires viewers to open their consciousness to foreign influences and unknown environments, a process that can be both exhilarating and terrifying. The viewers are essentially volunteering to have their minds invaded by foreign intelligence, and the psychological consequences of this exposure accumulate over time. McMonigle describes the remote viewing process as similar to method acting, where the viewer must immerse themselves completely in the target environment to gather accurate intelligence. This immersion comes with psychological risks, particularly when the targets are hostile facilities or dangerous situations. The viewers must maintain their psychological equilibrium while exposing themselves to environments that might be designed to cause psychological harm. The program's medical staff becomes increasingly concerned about the long-term effects of remote viewing on the participants' mental health. Regular psychological evaluations are instituted to monitor the viewer's psychological stability, and several participants are eventually removed from operational duties due to psychological problems that appear to be related to their remote viewing activities. As the Cold War begins winding down in the late 1980s, the program faces increasing scrutiny from skeptical officials who question both its effectiveness and its cost. The changing political climate creates an environment where unconventional programs like Stargate become vulnerable to budget cuts and policy changes. The program's supporters argue that remote viewing provides unique intelligence capabilities that will remain valuable even as the Cold War ends, but critics contend that the program's successes don't justify its continued funding. The skepticism isn't entirely unfounded. While the program has produced some remarkable successes, it has also generated a substantial amount of information that proved inaccurate or useless. The nature of remote viewing means that even successful sessions often include inaccurate details mixed with genuine intelligence, making it difficult to separate useful information from psychological noise. The program's critics argue that the apparent successes could be explained by lucky guesses, unconscious cueing from the researchers, or the viewer's ability to access information through conventional means rather than psychic abilities. They point out that many of the program's most dramatic successes involve targets where some information was already available through conventional intelligence sources, suggesting that the viewers might be unconsciously accessing existing knowledge rather than generating genuinely new insights. The debate over the program's effectiveness reflects broader questions about the scientific study of psychic phenomena. The experimental protocols used in the Stargate program are designed to eliminate fraud and unconscious bias, but critics argue that the results still don't meet the standards of evidence required for scientific acceptance. The statistical significance of the program's results is disputed, with different analysts reaching different conclusions about the meaning of the data. The debate intensifies when Congress begins asking hard questions about the program's cost and effectiveness. Over its 23-year history, Project Stargate has cost an estimated $20 million, a significant investment even by the standards of the intelligence community. The program's supporters argue that even a small percentage of accurate intelligence from an undetectable source justifies the expense, but budget-conscious politicians and skeptical officials aren't convinced. The congressional scrutiny reflects the changing political environment of the post-Cold War era. With the Soviet Union collapsing and defense budgets under pressure, programs like Stargate become easy targets for cost-cutting measures. The program's classification makes it difficult to defend publicly, and its unusual nature makes it vulnerable to ridicule from politicians and media commentators who don't understand its serious intelligence applications. The beginning of the end comes in 1995 when the CIA commissions a final, comprehensive review of the program's effectiveness and future potential. The American Institutes for Research is tasked with evaluating whether remote viewing produces actionable intelligence and whether the program should continue to receive government funding. The review is designed to be objective and comprehensive, involving both supporters and critics of the program. The review process is exhaustive, involving detailed analysis of thousands of remote viewing sessions, statistical evaluation of the program's accuracy rates, and interviews with participants, researchers, and intelligence officials who have worked with the program. The reviewers examine both the program's successes and its failures, trying to develop a balanced assessment of its overall effectiveness. The researchers conducting the review face a difficult challenge. They must evaluate claims about psychic phenomena using scientific methods, while also considering the program's practical value as an intelligence tool. The review must address both the theoretical questions about the reality of psychic abilities and the practical questions about whether the program provides useful intelligence to the American government. The final report, released in 1995, reaches conclusions that are both supportive and critical of the program. The reviewers conclude that while some remote viewing sessions have produced information that appears to exceed chance expectations, the overall quality of intelligence isn't sufficient to justify continued operational funding. They note that the program has never provided intelligence that led to a major breakthrough or prevented a significant threat to American security. The report acknowledges that the program's most successful sessions involved targets where some information was already available through conventional intelligence sources, suggesting that the viewers might be unconsciously accessing existing knowledge rather than generating genuinely new insights. The reviewers also note that the program's accuracy rates, while statistically significant, aren't high enough to make remote viewing a reliable intelligence tool. But here's what makes the final report particularly intriguing. It also acknowledges that something genuinely anomalous appears to be happening in the remote viewing sessions. The statistical analysis shows that the program's results can't be explained by chance alone, and the reviewers can't identify any conventional explanation for the apparent successes. While they can't explain how remote viewing works, they can't dismiss it entirely either. The report's conclusions are carefully worded and deliberately ambiguous. The reviewers recommend that while the operational program should be terminated due to its limited practical value, basic research into the phenomena should continue under more controlled conditions. They suggest that the anomalous results observed in the program merit further scientific investigation, even if the operational applications don't justify continued funding. The official termination of Project Stargate comes in 1995, but the story doesn't end there. The program's termination is announced quietly, without fanfare or public explanation. The facilities are closed, the personnel are reassigned, and the equipment is stored or destroyed. After 23 years of operation, one of the most unusual programs in government history simply disappears. Many of the program's former participants go public with their experiences following the termination. The end of the program releases them from their security obligations, allowing them to speak openly about their experiences for the first time. Books are written, documentaries are made, and the once classified research becomes the subject of intense public interest and debate. The public revelation of Project Stargate creates a sensation in both the mainstream media and the alternative research community. The idea that the American government spent decades investigating psychic phenomena captures public imagination and generates intense debate about the nature of consciousness and the limits of human perception. The program's existence validates the claims of psychic researchers while also raising questions about government secrecy and the use of public funds for unusual research projects. Some of the former viewers established private companies offering remote viewing services to corporate clients, law enforcement agencies, and private individuals. They argue that the skills developed during their government service can be applied to civilian applications, from finding missing persons to providing business intelligence. The commercialization of remote viewing represents an attempt to continue the program's work in the private sector. Others continue their research independently, convinced that the government program only scratched the surface of human psychic potential. They establish research foundations, organize conferences, and publish papers arguing that remote viewing represents a genuine breakthrough in our understanding of consciousness. Their work continues the scientific investigation of psychic phenomena that began with Project Stargate. The declassified documents from Project Stargate reveal a program that was far more extensive and sophisticated than anyone outside the intelligence community had imagined. The files show that remote viewing was used to investigate everything from terrorist threats to missing persons cases, from archaeological mysteries to environmental disasters. The breadth of applications suggests that the military and intelligence communities took the program very seriously, regardless of public skepticism about psychic phenomena. The documents also reveal the scientific rigor that was applied to the research. The program wasn't just a collection of psychics making wild claims. It was a carefully controlled experimental program with strict protocols, statistical analysis, and peer review. The researchers published their findings in scientific journals, presented their work at academic conferences, and submitted their methods to scrutiny by independent scientists. The scientific establishment's response to the Stargate research has been mixed and continues to evolve. While most mainstream scientists remain skeptical of psychic phenomena, some respected researchers have acknowledged that the experimental results are difficult to explain using conventional models of consciousness and perception. The debate continues in academic circles, with some scientists calling for more research into what they term anomalous cognition. The program's legacy extends far beyond the intelligence community and the scientific establishment. The techniques developed for remote viewing have been adapted for use in therapy, creativity training, and personal development. The program's emphasis on altered states of consciousness helped legitimize research into meditation, visualization, and other mind-body practices that are now widely accepted in mainstream psychology and medicine. What's particularly intriguing is that similar programs appear to have existed in other countries, confirming the American viewers' reports of foreign psychic research. Declassified Soviet documents suggest that the Russians were indeed conducting extensive research into psychic phenomena, lending credibility to the claims about psychic warfare between the superpowers. The Chinese military is believed to have had similar programs, and there are reports of ongoing research into paranormal abilities in several other countries. The international dimension of psychic research suggests that Project Stargate was part of a broader phenomenon involving multiple governments and scientific establishments. The fact that several countries independently developed similar programs indicates that the research was taken seriously by military and intelligence communities worldwide, regardless of public skepticism about psychic phenomena. Today, decades after the program's termination, the debate over Project Stargate continues to evolve. New books and documentaries regularly revisit the story, and former participants continue to share their experiences and insights. The program has become part of popular culture, inspiring movies, television shows, and novels that explore themes of consciousness, reality, and human potential. The story of Project Stargate ultimately reveals something profound about human nature and the relationship between consciousness and reality. Whether or not the program succeeded in developing genuine psychic capabilities, it demonstrated the extraordinary lengths to which human beings will go in their quest to understand the mysteries of consciousness and unlock the hidden potentials of the human mind. The program's legacy continues to influence research into consciousness, challenge our assumptions about the nature of reality, and inspire new generations of scientists and researchers to explore the furthest frontiers of human potential.